The Harley died 3 blocks from the elementary school, sputtering twice before the engine cut out completely and left Marcus Webb coasting to the shoulder in silence. He guided it to a stop beside a chain-link fence, kicked the stand down, and sat there for a moment, listening to the tick of cooling metal and the distant shouts of kids on a playground. March in the Missouri Ozarks couldn't decide what it wanted to be. The morning had started cold enough to see your breath, warmed to something almost pleasant by noon. And now, at 3:30, the wind had turned raw again, carrying the smell of mud and old snow from the hills. Marcus pulled off his gloves and crouched beside the bike, already knowing what he'd find. The fuel line had been giving him trouble since Branson. He'd meant to fix it properly. He'd meant to do a lot of things. "That's a 2004 Softail." The voice came from behind him, young, certain, the kind of tone that expected to be corrected but said it anyway. Marcus turned and found a boy standing on the other side of the fence, maybe 10 years old, a backpack hanging off one shoulder. He had dark hair that needed cutting and eyes that were doing calculations Marcus recognized, sizing him up, figuring the angles, deciding whether to stay or run. 2003, Marcus said. "Good eye, though. My dad had a Dyna before." The boy didn't explain before what. "Sounds like your fuel line." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You know bikes?" "I know engines." The boy shifted his weight, glancing back toward the school, like he was checking if anyone was watching. "There's a kink sometimes where the line meets the filter. You have to—" He stopped, suddenly uncertain. "Sorry, you probably know." "Show me." The boy hesitated, then he dropped his backpack, scaled the fence in 3 quick moves, and landed beside the Harley like he'd done it 100 times. He crouched next to Marcus and pointed to a spot near the tank, not touching, just indicating. "There. See how it's pinched? My dad used to fix them with a piece of rubber hose as a sleeve, said the factory line was too stiff." Marcus looked. The kid was right, a small kink, easy to miss, just enough to starve the engine under load. He'd been riding with it for 60 miles, nursing the throttle, and this 10-year-old had spotted it in 30 seconds. "What's your name?" Danny Reyes." "Marcus, most people call me Throttle." He sat back on his heels. "You got somewhere to be, Danny?" The boy's face flickered, lost, then nothing. "My grandma's house. It's not far. She doesn't get off work until 5. She know you walk home alone?" "She knows." Danny picked up a stick and poked at the gravel. "It's only a mile." Marcus looked at the boy, then at the bike, then at the empty street. The responsible thing would be to send him on his way, call a tow truck, handle his own problems. But there was something in Danny's face that kept him there, a hunger that had nothing to do with food. The kid wanted to be useful, wanted to matter to someone. "I've got a patch kit in my saddlebag," Marcus said. "You want to help me fix this, or you got homework?" Danny was already reaching for the saddlebag before Marcus finished the sentence. They worked together for 20 minutes, Danny handing tools before Marcus asked for them, anticipating the next step like he'd done this 1,000 times. Marcus found himself narrating what he was doing, not because the kid needed instruction, but because Danny was listening with an intensity that deserved acknowledgement. When was the last time anyone had really taught this boy something? "Where'd you learn all this?" Marcus asked, fitting the rubber sleeve into place. "My dad, he was a mechanic before." There it was again. Before. Marcus didn't push. "He taught me on weekends," Danny continued, quieter now. "Said everyone should know how to fix what's broken. Said, it's how you stay free." Marcus tightened the last clamp and wiped his hands on his jeans. "Smart man." "He's in prison." Danny said it flat, like a fact about the weather. 3 years now. My mom's gone too. Overdose. So I live with my grandma." The words hung in the air. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Not pity, which the boy would have sensed and hated, but recognition. He knew that tone. He'd used it himself after his son Caleb had died. The flat delivery of impossible things because feeling them fully would break you apart. "I'm sorry," Marcus said. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. But it was true. Danny shrugged. That too old gesture kids learned when adults had let them down too many times. "It's okay. Grandma Rosa's good. She makes tamales on Sundays." "Yeah? She any good?" "The best." For the first time, Danny smiled, small but real. "She says food is how you tell people you love them when words aren't enough." Marcus turned the key. The engine caught clean, rumbling to life without hesitation. Danny's eyes lit up at the sound, and for a moment he looked his age, just a kid, proud of something he'd helped build. "You did good work," Marcus said. "I mean that." "Thanks." Danny picked up his backpack, suddenly awkward. "I should go. Grandma worries if I'm late." "Hold on." Marcus reached into his vest and pulled out a card, plain white, just a phone number and the North Country Riders logo. "You ever need anything, you call that number. Ask for Throttle. Someone will find me." Danny looked at the card like it might bite him. "Why?" "Because you helped me when you didn't have to. That means something where I come from." The boy tucked the card into his pocket without another word. He climbed back over the fence, grabbed his backpack, and started walking down the road. At the corner, he turned and raised one hand, not quite a wave, just an acknowledgement. Then he was gone. Marcus sat on his bike for a long moment, watching the empty street. The engine hummed beneath him. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain from the west. He should get back on the road. He had places to be, a club meeting in Springfield, brothers waiting, but he found himself thinking about the house where Danny was headed, the grandmother who worked until 5, the father in prison, the mother in the ground. He thought about Caleb, 3 years gone, and the phone calls he hadn't made, and the weekends he'd spent on the road instead of at home. Some mistakes you couldn't fix, but some you could see coming if you paid attention, if you didn't look away. Marcus pulled out his phone and called Razor, the club's president. "I'm going to be a couple days late. Something came up." "Everything okay?" "Not sure yet. I'll let you know." He hung up and rode slowly through town, past the dollar store and the feed shop and the Baptist church with the marquee that read, "Faith is taking the first step." Even when you can't see the whole staircase, he wasn't looking for anything in particular. He was just looking. The house at the end of Maple Street had a sagging porch and a yard that needed work, but the windows were clean and there were flowers in pots on the steps, the kind of small defiances that said someone here was trying. A statue of the Virgin Mary stood in the garden, weathered but cared for. Through the front window, Marcus could see a candle burning on a shelf. He didn't stop, didn't knock, just filed the address away and rode to the motel on the highway, where he paid for 3 nights and sat on the edge of the bed, wondering what exactly he thought he was doing. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize. "Thank you for the card. Danny." Below it, a second message. "My grandma says anyone who rides alone in March needs hot food. She wants to know if you like tamales." Marcus stared at the screen. Then he typed back, "Tell her I'll bring the beer." He set the phone down and looked out the window at the gray sky, the bare trees, the road that led in every direction but home. Tomorrow. He'd figure it out tomorrow. Rosa Reyes had the kind of hands that told her whole story, calloused from decades of cleaning other people's houses, scarred from kitchen burns, gentle when they touched her grandson's face. She was 67 years old and looked 80, worn down by the particular exhaustion of people who had never once in their lives been allowed to rest. But her eyes were sharp and her tamales were extraordinary. And when she laughed, which she did twice during dinner, the whole room felt warmer. Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his boots off, a concession to the house rules posted by the door. Danny sat across from him, more relaxed than he'd been by the roadside, occasionally sneaking pieces of pork to a 3-legged dog named Buster, who had claimed a spot under the boy's chair. "So," Rosa said, setting down a plate of churros she'd somehow produced while Marcus wasn't looking, "Danny tells me you ride alone. No wife? No family?" "Grandma." Danny's voice carried a warning. "What? I'm making conversation. It's what old women do." She fixed Marcus with a look that expected answers. "Well, I was married. Long time ago." Marcus picked up a churro, buying himself a moment. "We had a son, Caleb. He passed 3 years back." Rosa crossed herself. "Lo siento. What happened, if I can ask?" "He took his own life. He was 22. The words came out easier than they used to, but only just. I was on the road a lot back then. Thought I was providing for my family. Turned out I was just running from them." He set down the churro, appetite gone. By the time I figured that out, it was too late. The kitchen was quiet. Danny had stopped feeding Buster. Rosa reached across the table and put her hand over Marcus's, her rough palm warm against his skin. "Grief makes us stupid," she said. It makes us think we have to carry everything alone, but that's not how God designed us. We're supposed to lean on each other." She squeezed his hand once, then let go. "More coffee?" "Please." Danny cleared the plates without being asked, moving through the kitchen with the efficiency of a kid who had learned early that help wasn't always available when you needed it. Marcus watched him work and saw it clearly now. The way the boy anticipated needs, filled gaps, made himself useful so that no one would ever think he was a burden. He knew that dance. He'd taught it to Caleb without meaning to. After dinner, Danny showed Marcus the garage, a detached building behind the house that had been converted into a workshop. Tools hung on pegboard walls, organized by size and function. A workbench ran the length of one side, covered in engine parts and half-finished projects. In the corner sat a motorcycle frame, stripped down to nothing, waiting for resurrection. "This was my dad's," Danny said. "He was rebuilding it before he went away, a 1978 shovelhead. He said when he got out we'd finish it together." Marcus walked around the frame, running his hand along the metal. "Good bones, solid work." "How much longer does he have?" 4 years, maybe 3 with good behavior." Danny's voice was carefully neutral. "He writes sometimes, I write back. Grandma takes me to visit when she can afford the gas." "That's a long drive?" 6 hours, the prison's in Jefferson City." Marcus did the math. Gas money, time off work, a 10-year-old sitting in a visitation room trying to talk to his father through plexiglass, every month or two, if they were lucky. The rest of the time, letters and silence. "Danny." Marcus turned to face him. "What's really going on here? With your grandma, with the house? Something's wrong. I can see it." The boy's face closed up, that too familiar wall slamming down. "Nothing's wrong. Kid, I've been reading people for 30 years. Your grandmother's moving slow, like she's in pain. Half the food in that refrigerator came from a church pantry. I saw the labels. And there's a notice on the counter she tried to hide under a dish. Towel. But I caught the words, 'past due,' before she covered it." He kept his voice level, no accusation in it. "I'm not here to judge. I'm asking because I want to help." Danny was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was smaller than before. "Grandma needs surgery, her hip. She's been putting it off for 2 years because she can't afford to miss work. But last month she fell, and now she can barely walk. The doctor says if she doesn't get it fixed soon, she might not walk again." He picked up a wrench from the workbench, turning it over in his hands. "She tried to go back to work anyway. Lasted 3 days before Mrs. Patterson sent her home." "And the bills?" "We're 2 months behind on the mortgage. The bank sent a letter. And there's a lady from the county who keeps coming by, asking questions about me, whether Grandma can take care of me, whether I have enough to eat." Danny's grip tightened on the wrench. "I heard her on the phone last week. She was crying. She thinks I didn't hear, but I did. She's scared they're going to take me away." Marcus felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders. The impossible math of poverty, where every solution created 2 new problems and standing still meant falling behind. Rosa couldn't work. Without work, there was no money. Without money, they'd lose the house. Without the house, Danny would be placed in foster care. And a 10-year-old boy who had already lost both parents would lose the only family he had left. "What about other relatives? Anyone who could help?" Danny's face hardened. "My dad's brother, Garrett. He came around a few months ago, said he wanted to help, said he could take care of me, give Grandma a break." The words came out bitter. "But I heard him talking to his wife on the phone. He doesn't care about me. He wants the house. Grandma owns it free and clear. It was my great-grandpa's. Garrett figures if he gets custody, he can sell it and keep the money." "Your grandma knows this?" "She threw him out. Told him if he came back, she'd call the sheriff." A ghost of a smile crossed Danny's face. "Grandma's small, but she's mean when she has to be." Marcus almost laughed. He could picture it. This tiny, worn-down woman squaring off against a man who wanted to sell her grandson's birthright. But the smile faded quickly. "Mean only got you so far when the system was stacked against you. Does the county caseworker know about Garrett?" "I don't know. Maybe. Grandma doesn't like to talk about it." Danny set the wrench down and looked at Marcus with eyes that had seen too much. "I've been trying to help. I do odd jobs after school. Mr. Kim at the convenience store lets me stock shelves sometimes, and I mow lawns when it's warm enough. I'm saving everything I make. But it's not enough. It's never enough. A 10-year-old trying to save his family one $5 bill at a time." Marcus thought about Caleb again, about all the times his son had tried to get his attention, tried to show him something was wrong, and Marcus had been too busy or too blind to see it. "Danny, listen to me." He crouched down so they were eye to eye. "What's happening to your family isn't your fault, and it isn't your job to fix it. You're a kid. You're supposed to be worrying about school and baseball and whether some girl thinks you're cute. Not mortgages, not custody hearings. But if I don't, then other people will. That's what I'm trying to tell you." Marcus put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You helped me today, a stranger. You didn't ask what was in it for you, didn't walk away when you could have. That's rare. That's worth something. And where I come from, we pay our debts." Danny's eyes were wet, but he didn't cry. He'd probably taught himself not to years ago. "You can't fix this," he said. "Nobody can." "Maybe not, but I know people who are real good at showing up when things look impossible." Marcus straightened. "I need to make some calls, and I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" The boy hesitated. Trust wasn't something that came easy, not after everything he'd been through. But something in Marcus's face must have reached him, because after a long moment, he nodded. "Okay." "Good. Now go help your grandma with the dishes, and stop sneaking pork to the dog. She's going to figure it out." Danny almost smiled. She already knows. She just pretends she doesn't. He went back inside, leaving Marcus alone in the garage with the skeleton of a motorcycle and the weight of a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. Marcus pulled out his phone, called Razor. "You still in that town?" Razor's voice was gruff but not unkind. "Yeah, and I need a favor, a big one." "How big?" Marcus looked at the shovelhead frame, at the tools on the walls, at the small house where a grandmother and a boy were holding on by their fingernails. "How many brothers can we get to Missouri by the weekend?" A pause. Then, "Tell me what you need." Marcus told him. When he hung up, the sun had gone down and the garage was dark except for the light spilling through the window from the kitchen. He could see Danny at the sink, washing dishes, and Rosa in her chair with a heating pad pressed against her hip. He thought about Caleb, about all the things he should have done and didn't. This time would be different. This time, he wouldn't look away. The next 3 days moved fast. Marcus made calls from dawn until his phone battery died, then charged it and made more. Razor worked the network from Springfield, reaching out to chapters across 3 states. By Wednesday night, they had commitments from over 200 riders, North Country, Iron Circle, Steel Brotherhood, and half a dozen smaller clubs that owed favors or just wanted to help. By Thursday morning, the number had climbed past 300. "This is getting bigger than we planned," Razor said during their evening call. "People are talking. Word got out about the kid, about the grandmother. Folks want to be part of something good." "Can we handle 300? We've handled more. Remember the Veterans Day ride in 19? 400 bikes, not a single problem." Razor's voice sobered. "But that was a parade. This is different. We're showing up to make a point. We need to be careful how that point gets made." Marcus understood. 300 bikers descending on a small Ozark town could look like a lot of things: a show of support, a community rally, or an invasion. The line between them was thin, and it mattered which side they landed on. He spent Thursday at Rosa's house, helping where he could. Fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom, patched a hole in the porch screen. Nothing that would solve the real problems, but Rosa seemed to appreciate having something done. And Danny trailed after him like a shadow, handing tools and asking questions about engine timing and carburetor tuning. The caseworker came at 2 o'clock, a woman named Helen Marsh, mid-50s, with tired eyes and a clipboard that she wielded like a shield. Marcus made himself scarce, watching from the garage as she sat in the living room with Rosa, asking questions in a voice too low to hear. Danny found him there 20 minutes later, his face tight with anger. "She asked if Grandma ever forgets to feed me, if I have clean clothes for school, if there's ever alcohol in the house." He kicked at a pebble, sending it skittering across the concrete floor. "Grandma started crying. She tried to hide it, but I saw. The caseworker's just doing her job, Danny. Her job is making Grandma feel like a criminal for being old and sick." The boy's hands were balled into fists. "It's not fair. She gave up everything for me. Her savings, her retirement, her whole life. And now, these people come in and act like she's not good enough." Marcus didn't have an answer for that. The system wasn't built for fairness. It was built for checkboxes and liability, for covering the county's back in case something went wrong. Helen Marsh probably did care, in her own way, but caring didn't change the math. If Rosa couldn't demonstrate that she could provide for Danny, the state would find someone who could, and that someone might be Garrett. "Your uncle," Marcus said, "has he been around lately?" Danny's face went dark. "He came by yesterday, while you were at the motel, brought papers for Grandma to sign, something about temporary guardianship, said it would help with the caseworker, make things easier while she got her surgery." "What did Rosa do?" "Told him to get out. Said she'd die before she signed anything that put me in his hands." Danny's voice cracked. "But I heard her talking to Father Miguel last night. She's scared, Marcus. She's trying not to show it, but she's really scared." Father Miguel. That was a name Marcus hadn't heard before. Who's Father Miguel? "The priest at St. Anne's. He's been helping us. Brings groceries sometimes, helps Grandma with her bills. He's the one who got her on the list for the surgery, through some charity program. But the waiting list is 6 months, and the bank isn't going to wait that long." Another piece of the puzzle. Marcus filed it away and made a mental note to visit St. Anne's before the weekend. Friday morning, everything fell apart. Marcus was at the diner on Main Street, meeting with a local contractor about doing the porch repairs for free, when his phone rang. Danny's number. "Marcus." The boy's voice was thin, shaking. "You need to come. Now." "What happened?" "Grandma fell again. She was trying to get to the bathroom and her hip gave out. The ambulance is here. They're taking her to the hospital in Harrison." Marcus threw a 20 on the table and ran for his bike. By the time he reached the hospital, Rosa was in surgery, emergency hip replacement, no more waiting lists, no more delays. The doctor said it was a blessing in disguise. The fall had done damage that couldn't be ignored. But Danny sat in the waiting room with a look on his face that said he wasn't seeing any blessings. "The caseworker called," he said when Marcus sat down beside him. "Mrs. Marsh, she heard about the fall. She's coming to the hospital this afternoon." "That's routine. They have to check on you. She's bringing my uncle." Marcus went still. "What?" "Garrett filed something with the court. Emergency custody petition. He says Grandma can't take care of me. That this proves it." Danny's voice was hollow. "Mrs. Marsh said they have to consider all options. She said temporary placement might be best while Grandma recovers." The words hit Marcus like a fist. He'd seen this before, the system moving fast when it decided to move, crushing people under procedures and paperwork before they could catch their breath. Garrett had been waiting for this, waiting for Rosa to stumble so he could swoop in and play the concerned relative. "Danny, listen to me. Nothing's decided yet. Your grandma is going to get through this surgery, and when she does, it doesn't matter." The boy looked up, and Marcus saw something broken in his eyes. "Even if she gets better, they're not going to let her keep me. She can't work. She can't pay the bills. And Garrett has money and a house and a wife who doesn't have a police record." His voice cracked. "I looked it up. Dad's conviction counts against her, against us. The court thinks we're a bad family. That's not... It's true." Danny's hands were shaking. "I thought maybe, with you and your friends coming, maybe things would be different. But what's a bunch of bikers going to do against lawyers and courts and people in suits?" He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, angry at himself for crying. "You should go. Go back to your club, your life. This isn't your problem." Marcus sat there in the hospital waiting room, surrounded by the smell of disinfectant and the soft beep of machines, and felt the weight of every failure he'd ever carried. Caleb's face swam up from memory, not the boy he'd raised, but the young man he'd barely known, the one who'd stopped calling because his father never called back. He could leave. Danny was right about that. This wasn't his family, his town, his fight. He could ride out of here and be in Springfield by nightfall, back among brothers who expected nothing from him but miles on the road and a seat at the table. But then he thought about the fuel line, kinked and starving the engine, about a 10-year-old who'd spotted the problem in 30 seconds because someone had taught him to look, about Rosa's tamales and the Virgin Mary in the garden, and the shovel-head frame waiting in the garage for a father who wouldn't be home for 4 more years. Some things you couldn't fix, but some things you could show up for. "Danny." Marcus put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you." He pulled out his phone and called Razor. "Change of plans. We're not waiting until the weekend. I need everyone here by tomorrow morning. and I need you to find me a lawyer, someone who knows family court, someone who isn't afraid to fight dirty. Throttle, that's less than 24 hours. I don't know if... Make it happen. Call in every favor we've got. This kid's not going to foster care, and he's damn sure not going to an uncle who wants to sell his home out from under him. Marcus looked at Danny, who was watching him with something fragile in his eyes, something that might have been hope, if hope still lived in a 10-year-old who'd lost almost everything. Tell them what I told you. Tell them about the boy and his grandmother and the bike in the garage. Tell them we've got one shot to do something that matters. A long pause, then Razor's voice, quiet and certain. They'll come. Every last one of them. Marcus hung up. Danny was still staring at him. You really think it'll make a difference? All those bikes, all those people? I think your grandmother taught you that food is how you tell people you love them when words aren't enough. Marcus put his phone away. Well, this is how we do it. We show up. We stand together. We make it impossible for anyone to pretend you don't matter. Danny didn't say anything, but he leaned into Marcus's side just slightly and didn't pull away. They sat like that for a long time, waiting for news from surgery, while the sun moved across the sky and 300 engines started warming up across 3 states. They heard the bikes before they saw them. It started as a low rumble in the distance, like thunder rolling in from the hills. Danny had fallen asleep in the hospital chair sometime after midnight, curled up under Marcus's jacket, and he woke with a start as the sound grew louder. Outside the window, the first gray light of dawn was spreading across the parking lot, and filling it, one by one, were motorcycles. They came from every direction, down the main road from the highway, up the side streets from town, spilling into the hospital parking lot in a river of chrome and leather that seemed to have no end. Harleys and Indians and old shovelheads that had seen 30 years of road, riders in cuts from clubs Danny had never heard of, North Country, Iron Circle, Steel Brotherhood, Rolling Thunder, Desert Sons, men with gray beards and young men with fresh tattoos, women with road-worn faces and steady hands. They filled the lot, then the overflow lot, then lined the street in both directions until the whole block belonged to them. Danny pressed his face to the window, counting. He lost track at 150. 312, Marcus said, reading a text on his phone. And more coming. All for me. All for you. And your grandma. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. Let's go say hello. They walked out into the dawn together, into the smell of exhaust and coffee, and the particular electricity of 300 people who had ridden through the night to be somewhere that mattered. Riders nodded as Danny passed. A woman with silver hair and a Steel Brotherhood patch pressed a breakfast burrito into his hands. Someone had set up a table with coffee urns and donuts near the emergency entrance, and a man in a North Country cut was handing cups to the night shift nurses who had come out to stare. Razor found them near the entrance. He was a big man, bigger than Marcus, with arms like bridge cables and eyes that missed nothing. He looked at Danny for a long moment, then extended his hand. You're the kid who fixed Throttle's fuel line. Danny shook it, trying not to show how nervous he was. Yes, sir. Good work. That's a tricky spot to diagnose. Razor glanced at Marcus. Lawyer's on her way. Angela Reyes, out of Kansas City. No relation, far as I know. She handles family court, foster cases, custody fights. She's mean as a snake and twice as fast. She know what she's walking into? I told her everything, she said. Razor almost smiled. She said it sounds like fun. The caseworker arrived at 9, driving a county sedan that had to park 3 blocks away because there was no room closer. Helen Marsh walked through the sea of motorcycles with her clipboard clutched to her chest, her face a careful mask of professional neutrality. But Danny saw her eyes moving, counting, calculating. Garrett came 15 minutes later in a black SUV with a man in a suit who had to be his lawyer. They parked at the edge of the crowd and sat there for a long moment, engine running, like they were deciding whether to get out at all. Finally, the doors opened. Garrett was shorter than Danny remembered, with the soft belly of a man who worked behind a desk and the hard eyes of one who thought that made him better than people who didn't. His lawyer was tall and thin, with a briefcase that probably cost more than Rosa's monthly grocery budget. They walked toward the hospital entrance, and the crowd parted for them, not in welcome, but in the way a river parts around a stone. No one said anything. No one had to. 300 riders standing in silence, watching. The message was clear enough. Garrett's step faltered, just for a moment. Then he set his jaw and kept walking. Inside, they gathered in a conference room the hospital had cleared for the hearing. Helen Marsh at the head of the table, Garrett and his lawyer on one side, Danny and Marcus and Angela Reyes on the other. Father Miguel had come from St. Anne's, his collar bright against his black shirt, and he sat in the corner with a folder of documents on his lap. "This is highly irregular," Garrett's lawyer said, eyeing Angela. "We were expecting to discuss temporary custody arrangements with family services, not conduct a full hearing." "And I was expecting to find a child in need of emergency placement," Angela replied, her voice pleasant and sharp as a blade. "Instead, I find a child with a devoted grandmother who is currently recovering from surgery, a community that has rallied to support him, and a family member whose primary interest appears to be real estate." "That's an outrageous accusation." "Is it?" Angela opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. "Your client approached Rosa Reyes 4 months ago about purchasing her home. She refused. He approached her again 2 months later, this time with an offer to help with Danny's care in exchange for a stake in the property. She refused again and asked him to leave." She slid the papers across the table. "These are statements from 3 neighbors who witnessed those conversations, as well as a letter from Father Miguel documenting Mrs. Reyes's concerns about her brother-in-law's intentions." Helen Marsh took the papers, her face unreadable. Garrett's lawyer leaned over to whisper something urgent. "Furthermore," Angela continued, "I have documentation showing that Mrs. Reyes has been on a waiting list for hip surgery through the St. Anne's Charitable Care Program for 6 months, a surgery that has now been successfully completed, thanks to the emergency that precipitated this hearing. Her recovery time is estimated at 6 to 8 weeks, during which Danny will be cared for by members of the community who have already volunteered." She gestured toward the window, where the parking lot was still filled with bikes. 300 of whom are currently outside, prepared to testify to their commitment. "This is a circus," Garrett said, speaking for the first time. His voice was tight with anger. "You can't just parade a bunch of bikers through a custody hearing and pretend that's the same as stable family placement. Mr. Reyes," Helen Marsh's voice was quiet but firm, "I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've seen every kind of family you can imagine. Good ones, bad ones, broken ones, rebuilt ones. And in all that time, I've learned one thing. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up." She looked at the papers in front of her. Then she looked at Garrett. Then she looked at Danny. "Danny, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me, even if it's hard. Can you do that?" Danny nodded, his throat tight. "Do you want to live with your uncle?" The room went silent. Danny felt Marcus's presence beside him, solid and steady. But he knew this was his moment, his choice. No one else could make it for him. He thought about his grandmother, lying in a hospital bed upstairs, fighting to get back to him. He thought about his father, writing letters from a cell in Jefferson City, counting the days until he could come home. He thought about the shovel head in the garage, waiting to be finished. He thought about Marcus, who had stopped on a roadside 3 days ago and refused to leave. "No, ma'am." His voice came out stronger than he expected. "My grandmother is my family. My dad is my family. These people—" He gestured toward the window, toward the sea of leather and chrome. "They showed up for me when they didn't have to. That's what family does." He looked directly at Garrett. "My uncle didn't come here because he cares about me. He came because he wants our house, and I'm not going to let him take it." Garrett's face went red. "Now listen here." "Mr. Reyes." Helen Marsh's voice cut through like a knife. "I've heard enough. Based on the evidence presented, I see no grounds for emergency custody transfer. Mrs. Reyes has demonstrated a stable, loving home environment, and the community support for this family is—" She glanced at the window again, a flicker of something like wonder crossing her face. "Unprecedented. I'll be recommending that Danny remain in his grandmother's care, with regular check-ins until she's fully recovered." Garrett stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "This isn't over. My lawyer will—" "Your lawyer will tell you the same thing I'm about to," Angela said calmly. "You can fight this. You can drag it through the courts for months, spend thousands of dollars, and make everyone miserable, or you can walk away and let this family heal." She leaned forward slightly. "But I should tell you, Every one of those writers outside has my card now, and they're very good at showing up." For a long moment, Garrett stood there, vibrating with fury. Danny watched him and waited for the explosion, the threats, the promises of revenge. Instead, something strange happened. Garrett looked at Danny, really looked at him, maybe for the first time, and some of the anger drained out of his face. What replaced it was harder to read. Shame, maybe, or the uncomfortable recognition of what he'd become. "I used to change your diapers," he said quietly. "Did you know that? When your mom first brought you home, I was there every weekend. I thought—" He stopped, shook his head. "It doesn't matter what I thought." He turned and walked out without another word. His lawyer followed, briefcase swinging, already on his phone. The room let out a collective breath. Father Miguel crossed himself. Angela began gathering her papers with the satisfied air of a job well done. Danny sat very still, processing what had just happened. He'd won. They'd won. But the look on Garrett's face at the end, that wasn't the face of a villain. That was the face of a man who had lost his way and knew it. Marcus leaned over. "You okay?" "I think so." Danny's voice was barely a whisper. "Can I see my grandma now?" "Yeah, kid. Let's go see your grandma." They walked out of the conference room, through the lobby, past the windows where 300 writers were still waiting. As Danny emerged through the front doors, a cheer went up. Not loud, not rowdy, just a wave of acknowledgement that rolled through the crowd like a pulse. Danny raised his hand, the same gesture he'd given Marcus on that first day. Not quite a wave, just an acknowledgement. 300 hands rose in return. Marcus put his arm around Danny's shoulders, and together they walked back into the hospital, toward the elevator, toward the room where Rosa Reyes was waking up from surgery and asking for her grandson. 6 weeks later, the first real warmth of spring came to the Ozarks. Danny sat on the front porch of his grandmother's house, their house, the one that wasn't going anywhere, and watched the afternoon light move through the new leaves on the oak tree. Rosa was inside, moving slowly but moving, her walker thumping a steady rhythm across the kitchen floor as she prepared Sunday tamales. The doctor had cleared her to work again in another month, but Mrs. Patterson from down the street had already offered her a part-time position helping with bookkeeping, sitting work, no heavy lifting, twice what she'd made cleaning houses. The porch didn't sag anymore. A crew from the North Country Writers had come through 2 weeks after the hearing, 15 men and women with tool belts and lumber, and rebuilt it in a single weekend. They'd fixed the roof too, and the back steps, and painted the trim a bright white that made the whole house look new. Rosa had tried to pay them, and they'd refused so firmly she'd finally given up and made tamales instead, 6 dozen of them, wrapped in foil and distributed to every writer before they left. Buster lay at Danny's feet, his 3 legs twitching as he dreamed of whatever dogs dream about, squirrels probably. The old mutt had gotten fat in the past month, too many people stopping by with treats, wanting to meet the famous 3-legged dog from the news story. There had been news stories. A reporter from Springfield had picked up the story of the custody hearing, and it had spread from there, local news, then state, then a brief moment on a national morning show that Rosa had refused to watch. "I don't need strangers knowing my business," she'd said, but the attention had brought donations, a GoFundMe that Angela Reyes had set up without asking, which had raised enough to pay off the mortgage and cover Rosa's medical bills, and put the rest in a trust for Danny's education. He didn't know how to feel about that. The money was good. The attention was strange. But what stuck with him most was the letter that had arrived last week, forwarded through the prison system from his father. "I heard what happened," his dad had written. "The guards showed me the news clip. I saw you standing there with all those people behind you, and I couldn't stop crying. I'm so proud of you, mijo. You stood up for our family when I couldn't. You were brave when it mattered. That's all I ever wanted for you, to be brave when it matters. I talked to my counselor about good behavior. If everything goes right, I might be out in 2.5 years instead of 4. That's still a long time, but it's less than it was. And I'm going to spend every day earning my way back to you. Tell your grandmother I love her. Tell her I'm sorry I put this weight on her shoulders. And tell the man who helped you, Marcus. Tell him thank you. Tell him some debts can't be repaid, but they can be passed on. He'll know what that means." Danny had read the letter 4 times, Then he'd put it in the drawer with his father's other letters and gone out to the garage and stood for a long time looking at the shovel-head frame. The door creaked behind him. Marcus came out onto the porch, 2 bottles of root beer in his hand. He'd been staying at the motel for 6 weeks now, longer than he'd stayed anywhere in years, he said. But Danny knew he was getting ready to leave. The road called to men like Marcus. You could see it in the way his eyes drifted to the horizon, the way his hand sometimes reached for keys that weren't in his pocket. Your grandma says dinner's in an hour. Marcus handed him a bottle and settled into the other porch chair. She's making that green sauce you like. She's showing off for you. Maybe. Marcus smiled. She's earned the right. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the shadows lengthen across the yard. The Virgin Mary stood in her usual spot in the garden, freshly cleaned, a ring of marigolds planted at her feet. You're leaving tomorrow, Danny said. It wasn't a question. Yeah. Marcus took a long drink of root beer. Club's got to run to Colorado next week. Charity thing for a children's hospital. Razor wants me there. Will you come back? Marcus was quiet for a moment. You know, after Caleb died, I spent 3 years running. Told myself I was looking for something, but really, I was just trying to stay ahead of the grief. Like if I moved fast enough, it couldn't catch me. He looked at Danny. It caught me anyway. It always does. The trick isn't outrunning it. The trick is finding people worth standing still for. He reached into his vest and pulled out a folded paper, worn, familiar. The drawing Caleb had made all those years ago. Daddy and me. I used to carry this because it was all I had left of him. Now I carry it to remember what I learned too late. He tucked it away. Again. But you taught me something, Danny. You taught me it's not too late to learn it again. Danny didn't know what to say, so he said the only thing that felt true. You'll always have a place here. Grandma says so. I say so. I know. Marcus stood, stretched, looked out at the road that led away from town. I'll be back in June. Your dad's got a shovelhead that needs finishing, and I figure you could use some help. Danny felt something warm spread through his chest. I'd like that. Good. Marcus raised his root beer in a small salute. Now let's go eat. Your grandmother's been cooking all day, and I'm not brave enough to let it get cold. They went inside together, into the smell of masa and chiles and something sweet baking in the oven. Rosa looked up from the stove and smiled, her face still tired but lighter than it had been in months. The kitchen table was set for 3, with the good plates she saved for special occasions. Outside, the sun dipped below the tree line, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. A motorcycle rumbled past on the distant highway. Just one, heading somewhere, answering the call of the road. Danny heard it and smiled. Some people passed through your life and kept going. Others stopped and stayed and became the family you chose. The tamales were ready. They sat down to eat. If this story moved you, subscribe so you never miss one. And tell us in the comments, who showed up for you when you needed it most? We read every story.